Hello, there we go. Hello, Bryan Park. My name is Dan Fishman. I'm Vice President of Public Events here at Bryan Park, and so glad to see everyone here on this beautiful day. So thank you so much for joining us. Over the past 10 years, Bryan Park has had the great honor of hosting the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps bands on nearly an annual basis. Today's performance is especially noteworthy as the United States Navy celebrates 250 years. And yes, let's give that a round of applause. And we have the additional honor today of welcoming Rear Admiral Carl Lottie, Commander of the Navy Region Mid-Atlantic. So a brief knowledge about Rear Admiral Lottie. So Rear Admiral Carl Lottie is a native of Buffalo, New York. He's a 1989 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and holds a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering from a naval postgraduate school in Monterey, California, and also a Master of Arts in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. His operational tours include Division Officer USS Stonewall Jackson, Navigator USS Miami, and Executive Officer USS Dallas. He commanded the USS Nebraska in Bangor, Washington. His shore and staff assignments include...
Okay, the only people like my bio is my mother. So thanks a lot. All right, good afternoon, New York, and happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you for joining us today for a concert with the 2nd Marine Division Band, followed by Navy Band Northeast. It's truly an honor to be here in New York City. Memorial Day is the day we take the opportunity to recognize and remember the over 41 million Americans who were killed to defend our country and to keep us free. We held a very moving ceremony this morning on board the Intrepid where Mayor Adams was the guest speaker, and we paid tribute to those Americans who fell and who lost their lives. This afternoon, we're going to have an opportunity to see some outstanding service members that perform in our military musician area. We have a lot of bands around the world, and one of the things that they do best is the outreach to the public. They're a visible symbol of the military, and they're fun to listen to also. As Eric said, we're celebrating our 250th anniversary, or 250th birthday of the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps this year. So 250 years is a long time. The Navy was born in October in Philadelphia, and so we will have our official birthday cake cutting in Philadelphia in October this year. But these are all a prelude to the nation's 250th birthday next year. So for 37 years, we've had Fleet Week New York here in New York City, where we brought a couple of ships, and this year over 1,500 sailors and Marines to send our message into the streets of New York. And also to hopefully be good behaviors and ambassadors of the Navy and Marine Corps as we do that. The next year, Fleet Week will be shifted to July 4th. We have a much larger contingent of naval personnel and ships in the area as we celebrate the nation's birthday along with the rest of the nation. So don't look for us on Memorial Day next year. It'll be the 4th of July, but in 2027 we'll be back on Memorial Day. So this concert is the last official event in Fleet Week New York. So I know that you're in for a treat. We've had an outstanding week here in New York. We've had thousands of people visit USS New York and USS Oak Hill. We named the galley. The kitchen on New York is now named Hell's Kitchen. We thank New York for the street signs that are on the ship. And we've had an opportunity to have a couple of Coast Guard cutters and a number of Marines in the city really telling our story. We've also sent a number of helicopters to various schools and parks around the region where we can send a flight crew and they can talk about what they do to fly and what naval aviation is across the globe. We've had an outstanding opportunity to engage across the region to really tell your story. One of the reasons we have to come to New York is we're the nation's away team. You don't see us on a day-to-day basis. We do our job away from the United States. We are deployed around the globe 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, from the South China Sea to the Mediterranean Sea to the South Atlantic Ocean up to the Arctic Ocean. We're everywhere. And we're doing that so that we can deter conflict, so we don't have to go to war, so we don't have to have another 41 million Americans give their lives for our nation. We're out there deployed. We are the nation's away game, and we're there. Presence matters, and we have presence. Our ships, like the New York will carry 700 Marines, and they are ready to go with all their combat equipment on that ship, and that ship can go anywhere in the world. We have ships like New York deployed today. We have ships like aircraft carriers, submarines. They're all out there, and they're all forward deployed, ready to go, deterring conflict, and ready to respond. In peacetime, we help to maintain the sea lines of communication so trade can go back and forth from the United States. And in wartime, we're ready to dominate at sea. And we're ready to land the Marines ashore when necessary. I've had a tremendous career in the Navy, and I really thank New York City for all of your hospitality that we have had this particular week. It has been a phenomenal week, and we're happy to conclude with the 2nd Marine Division Band and Navy Band Northeast. Thank you.
我来了，是这样子来的。好。
All right, another big round of applause for the 2nd Marine Division Band. Beautiful. Give us just a few minutes as they march off. The Navy Band Northeast is about to perform. We're just going to get a couple of things set up and be ready to go, okay? So don't go anywhere.
All right, hey, while we're waiting for the Navy band, I'll fill time with fun facts about the Navy. So, who here likes the internet and a cell phone? All right. The internet and a cell phone work because we have precise time. The Navy owns the nation's master clock. So in Washington, D.C. at the Naval Observatory, we operate the nation's clock. And if you get your time from GPS, we give the time to the Air Force to put it into the GPS satellites. So the reason the Navy has the clock is because historically, the Navy needed to know exactly what time it was at sea, because you could not calculate your longitude from the stars without knowing the precise time. And so we spent great efforts over many decades perfecting time so we could take observations at sea, so we could know what our latitude was, so we could know where we had to go. And so that's the reason that navies have always had the most accurate clocks. And so our nation's time is kept by the United States Navy in the center of Washington, D.C. That's something most people don't know. All right, 70% of the world is covered by water. 80% of the world's population lives close to a coast, and 90% of global trade goes via the sea. When you think about that, the sea and the areas close to the sea are critical to the world's way of life. So one of the reasons we maintain our forward deployed presence is to make sure that the world and the oceans are safe for commerce and the free trade of goods and services, goods across the commodities across the world. And we've been doing that for a very long time. So your Navy Marine Corps team cut its teeth in the early 1800s off the coast of what is now Libya. It was then the Barbary States, and they were charging U.S. flagged vessels a tax to go through international waters in the Mediterranean Sea. We didn't think it was fair that we had to pay a tax. So the President of the United States sent the Navy and the Marine Corps over to the Barbary States to prevent them from charging us a tax. We were successful. So we learned a lot. We learned a lot from that on how to operate together as a Navy Marine Corps team. The first branch of the armed forces that forced the British to garrison more troops in England because they weren't sure if we were coming back. They probably didn't know we didn't have a whole lot of ships then. But he was able to take that fight forward because of the mobility that the ocean gives us. You might have heard the term, "don't give up the ship." Okay? That was uttered by Captain Lawrence as he was dying on board a ship, and Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry used that as the rallying cry at the Battle of Lake Erie, where the U.S. was successful in defeating the British in the War of 1812. Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry's brother, Commodore Matthew C. Perry, sailed a squadron of ships in the 1850s to Japan. And he is credited with ending 250 years of isolation for Japan. And are you Japanese? Nihongo hanemasu ka? No, I spent 3 years as Commander of Naval Force in Japan. But what we did is we sent a squadron of ships over, and we basically, Japan agreed to start a treaty relationship with the United States with trade. And we opened Japan up and started the modern era of Japan. and all of the industrial things that started from then. In fact, our largest base outside the United States is in Japan, and it's on the site of the first dry dock that was ever built in Japan. And so we have 19 ships forward deployed to Japan today, protecting our freedom out in the Western Pacific, and we're phenomenal partners with Japan, really across the entire Pacific. All right, I'm going to turn you over to Navy Band Northeast. Thank you.
Bryan Park, how's everybody doing today? Give a big round of applause to the Marines 2nd Division Band. They were amazing, weren't they? We're all very good friends with them, and we hope we can see them again soon. In the meantime, we're going to play some super fun music for y'all this afternoon. Unfortunately, we don't have our ceremonial band, all we got is our brass band, so you're going to have to make do with fun, high-energy music. Womp, womp. Okay. All right, so the whole point is for you to have fun, so we want you to sing, clap, dance, whatever you want to do to have a good time. Be sure to use your cell phones, whatever you got. Here we go. course. We love that tune. It's so fun. It's so fun. Who's had a great weekend here in New York City? And how about this weather today? My God. Took it till Memorial Day to get good weather here. We've been here since Wednesday, and it's been raining on us for 5 days straight. We finally get some good weather, but honestly, this is the best crowd we've had so far anyway, so give yourselves a round of applause. We're the Navy Band Northeast Brass Band. We're coming at you from Newport, Rhode Island. We come here every week. We come here every year for Fleet Week, and we love to do it. It's so fun, and this year we get to celebrate the 250th birthday of the Navy and the Marine Corps, and yeah, we're super excited to be here, and everybody give our Admiral here a round of applause for being here, doing everything he does. He does all the important work behind the scenes, and we just like walk around playing music, and everybody smiles, and they're like, man, the band sure is great, but Admiral does a lot of hard work as well, so thank you for that, sir. This next one, I think everybody's gonna recognize. We hope you enjoy our version of Espresso.
Yes, we were just talking about it.
hand for the soloist on that one. Musician second class, Nathan Cooper on the trombone. Musician first class, Eric Sider on the trumpet. And I gotta hand it to my main man with the sousaphone out back there. ME3 Nolan Derek. All right, I think everybody should recognize this next one too. It's not a new song, but I think all the music from the King of Pop tends to last quite a while. So we hope you enjoy our version of Human Nature. Thank you so much. Jay McLean on the drums. I guess I'll introduce everybody real quick. We only have time for one more. Before we leave Fleet Week for good this year for 2025 and put Fleet Week behind us. Unfortunately, we've all had, honestly, a wonderful time. I went to my first 2 Broadway shows this year. I saw Hamilton and The Lion King. It was unreal. Jay McLean on the drums from San Antonio, Texas. I don't know where anybody else is from because Jay and I are from Texas, and I don't know, who else? Nolan Derrick on the sousaphone. Eric Sider on the trumpet. Nathan Cooper on the trombone. Mike Maragliata on the trombone. Are you from Jersey? Okay. This is making sense. Everything's illegal, or everything's legal in New Jersey. I learned that at Hamilton. Justin Lockett on the Barry sax. My name's Mike Bryan. We're the Navy Band Northeast Brass Band. Please find us on Facebook and Instagram at Navy Band Northeast. This next one, you're gonna have to sing along. You'll know the words though. Here we go. Thank you. No, don't stand. If you stand up, then they're gonna make us do another one. Oh, the Jersey people. Guess who's back? Back again. Jersey's back. Tell a friend. All right, so I guess we'll just do one more then. Just one more. Well, that's it then. I don't know. Can you guys, what's that chant thing you do at the end? Like encore, one more song, whatever. Jay doesn't really want to do it. He's really hot. Look how sweaty he is. He's so sweaty. Yeah. Come on, more for Jay. For Jay. It's all for a good cause. It's for Jay. Admiral, one more. Is that okay with you? We've got command approval. All right. If we're gonna do one more, we're gonna do it our way. It's gonna be one of our favorite pop stars of all time. It's Britney. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed the 2nd Marine Division Band from the Marine Corps Camp Lejeune, Navy Band Northeast, Brass Band. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Ha ha ha.